All right, so well, there's
So speaking of bad movies,
all of the dong votes. All of
yes,
the dong votes.
let's get to the New Mutants, and this section of this episode of BSB of BD podcast is brought to you by Slutslight.com. Yes, win real money with Slutslight.com. I'll explain the joke now, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in my copy of, or I should say, in nearly every
Right. Right.
bootleg copy of New
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Mutants
all
I've
right.
seen.
Yeah. These yeah. They're gambling ads. Right. 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 Right.
Ah,
Yeah. That,
ah.
that
And
bullshit.
I'm like, I'm just looking for one, just one that do have it. And
Right.
okay, so just quickly, just want to say, I have pretty much stayed clear of this new age set of pirate films, right? Because
Yeah.
I grew up like okay, I think like one of the first pirate films I saw was Spider-Man back in 2002. This
Right.
was like right after I saw it theatrically, right? And
Yeah.
it was just a person just recording it on a
Yeah.
camera and a
Right.
digital camera, and that was it. Like
Yeah.
now I hear people talk about, well, I don't want to see the show in theater, I watch it home. Like, what are you gonna do? I just go and pirate it and watch it. And then like when I'm watching this thing, I'm seeing an ad
Yeah. No.
for
That.
for
Or
gambling
you'll
and
see. You'll see. Sometimes in some of these cases, you'll see like a just a like a pediatrician speak on screen.
yeah, some people have to come out. I'm like,
That's crack me up.
this is what all the this is why all they don't want to spend a little cash to watch a film. Like, even
You
if the
know.
movie is bad, right? You really want to sit down. And okay, it's one thing the quality sucks, right? But oh gosh, man, I have to
Yeah.
see your watermark through the entirety of the show.
You know.
Every time they cut to a scene, the watermark shifting all over the screen, and
You
then
know.
like that pinata thing. I'm like, you really want this? Okay,
You know.
but for me, this was a one-off thing. I only did this because of the next show we're gonna talk about, which
Right.
is Tenet, right? But I was like, all right, well, because New Mutants was one of the big shows to come out theatrically.
Right.
Unfortunately, it hasn't come out here along with Tenet, even though you were lucky to see it,
Yeah.
before, well, pre pandemic, right? Sorry, pre
Right. But
quarantine, right? Or whatever.
pre second lockdown.
Yeah, right. So what is New Mutants about, right? Essentially, it introduces us to, well, some new characters, right? Some new
Right.
mutants, haha, right?
Yeah.
Um,
When they filmed this was like filmed like 3 years ago. How long this film? Because that girl looking real young in this boy. Uh,
Maisie Williams. Oh my
yeah. Yeah.
god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. She was looking like this is like fifth, sixth season of Game of Thrones.
Right.
Yeah. I think that they started filming this. Well, they started actually in 2017. I'm actually reading this up right now on the wiki page, right?
Right.
Yeah, boy, and it kind of shows. Cause yeah, she look real young. But anyway, so she plays Reen Sinclair. Her power is that she could turn into a wolf. And she was born in like she was born apparently like raised sorry in this religious background basically, but there's some incident involving some priests who thought that she was a witch because she turns into a wolf, right? And
Right.
that just kind of scars her. But because of that, no, she's trying to open up and explore stuff. So she kind of starts a relationship. Sorry, but it was all over the marketing for this, and they kind of hinted it with a character by the name of Danny or Danielle Moonstar, right?
Right.
And the film starts with her, right? It's you have a little narration and stuff right from her, right? She is a Native American and she could actually create illusions based on, well, the fears and desires of other people, which is a
Right.
cool power, but I'll explain why it doesn't work in the show here, right? Also, we have Ilyana Rasputin, who is played by McGill, Anya Taylor-Joy. We have Sam Guti. Well, oh, sorry, her powers basically is that she has sorcery powers, right?
Right.
She has something called the Soul Sword, and she could teleport herself, and she could actually go into this dimension that she calls limbo. It's kind of weird, but she's kind of cool in this, right?
Right.
We also have Sam Guti. He could propel himself into the air. We have Bobby, who pretty much could manipulate solar energy, so he could just kind of channel it and just shoot it out, right? And essentially, it's just all these characters. Well, it starts off with Danny, right? And after some event involving this creature called the demon bear, which is exactly the way it sounds, it's this big gigantic bear, but it's a demon, ends up like destroying her village and killing her father.
Right.
She's taken into this school basically. So it's kind of like Xavier School for gifted students, whatever you call it. But
Right.
it's more like a laboratory kind of sense. So the person running it is Cecilia Reese, who is played by Alice Braga, and she pretty much just takes these mutants and she's just doing these tests on them, right? These psionic tests and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Right.
while they're there, of course, because they're teens, quote unquote, right? They have this kind of breakfast club kind of union thing going on. So at first they don't really like each other. Well, in this case, Danny's the new one, right? So she's introduced to everybody else. It's like, okay, well, you have these powers, and well, misunderstood and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff, right? And like I say, Reen, me and her trying to like kind of see things outside of a religion. She sparks a little romance basically with Danny, right? And it's kind of
Right.
cute to see. It's like whatever, but essentially it's them in this place. They trying to get along and whatnot, but the big threat now is that they're just seeing all these weird things. So all the mutants being confronted by, well, slight spoiler, their own fears and desires, right? So
Right. Right.
yeah, just out of the blue, right? And one thing leads to the next, and I'll stop there, right? So that whole thing, okay, so essentially what this show is trying to be, right? Emphasis on trying. It's trying to be a horror film within the X-Men universe.
Right.
So just as a high concept, it kind of works, right? So
Right.
what was surprising about this is it has a fairly small cast though.
Okay.
So it's just like just the characters I call out there, and there's like a couple other people like extras basically, and that's pretty much the main cast. Like it's all contained. It's all in this one mansion like place basically. So you get any vibe like okay, they doing this kind of haunted house kind of thing. They kind of doing the teens in this one place, and somebody's trying to kill them or attacking them or something like that, right? Now, as I said that, if it was like that, I would have been like, okay, this kind of working, okay. Some big entity or some big threat affecting them and they have to join together to stop them. But that's
Right.
not what we get here. What we
Right.
get is just the way I would describe this though, this essentially felt like an episode, like let me just say X-Men had a live action series. Like I don't know if any of the old X-Men cartoons ever touch on something like this, right? But I felt they do. They always have this one episode of like these cartoons where characters are kind of out of the element and they have to kind of
Right.
figure themselves out and come back together. That's essentially what we get here with the New Mutants, right? It's just characters dealing with their own shit and they kind of have to come together. Here's the problem. There's no real big antagonist or threat though. The only threat is just that you're hoping that these characters maintain their sanity at the end of the film, right? But
Right.
every single character, every single mutant is just confronted with some kind of weird thing and they just kind of have to deal with it, right? And you're there like thinking, okay, well, if it's just about them, then all right, well, eventually they're gonna get over it, but they still have to have some kind of big threat. They have to have some kind of big antagonist. And at first you're thinking, okay, it's Cecilia herself. Can I get to spoilers?
Yeah, you go ahead, man. I
Yeah.
like
Let me
I
get to
go.
spoilers. Let me get to spoilers, right?
I go. I watch this
So
for a hot
yeah.
minute. So
So the big twist with her is that she is actually part of the Essex Corporation
okay.
or
Right. Okay.
Foundation.
Right. Okay.
No, I
That
think
is
it's corporation, sir.
and I'm
I'm
Mr.
like,
Sinister.
okay, so that mean that they actually following through from Apocalypse, right? Because they left that hanging and they just jump into Dark Phoenix and shot the bed with that, right? And then also too in my head I was wondering, okay, well, is this after Apocalypse? But is this
Right.
before Logan? And then actually kind of revealed no, it's actually after Logan. Like okay,
Okay.
because
Okay. Nice. Okay.
they had a little snapshot. Well,
Also,
it's
it's okay.
essentially Danny having this vision of, well, they show the scene with the kids. I think it's in Mexico, wherever it was,
Right.
being manhandled by these guys, and all the kids had powers. So they show that moment there. And I was like,
Okay. So
okay, so
all right.
it's
Okay.
right after that. All right, because in my head when I heard New Mutants was going into production, and this was right after I saw Logan, I was like, okay, well, they made a touch on the kids that survive at the end of Logan, but it's gonna be right after that, right? Because it will make sense. Because how I saw it initially was okay. This is the reboot of the X-Men, basically, right?
Right.
And in the show, they talk about wow, oh, it would be cool if I was an X-Men and all that. If I was an X-Men, so like okay, so this is like leading up to them becoming the X-Men somewhat, right? But even in the worst X-Men movies, right? And you talk about best and worst a little bit. What really made these films work was having a great villain, was having an antagonist, right?
Right.
Someone who tested their powers. And it wasn't there. Okay, so slight spoiler, Cecilia has powers as well too. She could generate these force fields around her. That's her power. Okay,
Right.
cool. But that's not like all right, like okay, if you want her to be the antagonist, you gotta give her more than she's just gonna do all these freaky tests. Well, not freaky tests, all these experiments on the characters and whatnot. You gotta give her more than that. But that's what they do here. What they really try to paint her as is oh gosh, what they're gonna make Ratchet out of? Well, the season one of Ratchet on Netflix, taking the nurse, the villain from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
That's
and
right. Yeah. Yeah.
villainizing her further,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's how they try to paint it. So it's kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but with mutants, right? So they're being tested on and all that kind of stuff, right? But they don't even go too far with that neither. And I'm there wondering, like, maybe they cut stuff out to make it a PG-13 rating. Maybe there were more deep, dark stuff going. Like, I never got the sense that, okay, this is a person I should really be afraid of. I never got that. She was just there, and she was in the background, so she up to some shady shit that does it, right? And
Right.
speaking of that PG-13 rating, as much as it was trying to go for scares in this, and I know I was watching a crappy copy of the film, at no point in time did I feel any tension. I never got scared. Like they have a few moments of like creatures, especially from remember talking about people's visions now. So
Right.
like with
Right.
Ileana's perspective, the creatures that look like some rejects out of like a conjuring film. You probably saw them in
Right.
some stills. Like that's it. Ooh, wow, scary. But they look so generic. It's like that's it, really. Um, even Reen's dilemma with her being accused of a witch, and they have a shot of her seeing her priest while she was in the shower, and that's where you got the snapshot of her screaming, and it's like no, even that was all that like dark or like really like pointers, like the way how they were hyping up this show is like okay, we're gonna go into like the raw nitty gritty, like you really want to see these teen mutants go through hell in this movie. I didn't really get that here. I just saw what could have been, what I mean, a really dark take on the X-Men's, formula, but it was just toned down too much for me to really get. So it just felt like this watered down what really could have been an hour film just watered down just to cater to a wider audience, right? It's
Right.
a shame because of COVID and whatnot, but whatever, right? But yeah, I was just watching all this like nothing about this roping me in. I couldn't get this. I couldn't care about the characters. I mean, the acting is solid. I mean, from the leads themselves. Um, but okay, yeah, they have powers, but you don't really give them the opportunity for them to see the powers really. And that's another thing that the X-Men films deal, right? Even the bad ones. You got a chance to see just how skilled, that's how powerful these characters are, right? When they put into a situation. I never really got that there. It's just, oh, they're scared. There's only in the end you get to show off your powers. Bullshit. Waste of time, right?
Yeah.
But really and truly, what really would have made this film work was a stronger antagonist. Like I not seen have some kind of serial killer roll up in the crib and start killing people off, but I don't know if you want to go horror, give us that. Give us some kind of entity or something for us to be scared. And last thing that's what I was saying before I get to reading, the closest they really give us to that is the same demon bear. And how it's rectified is just the hero herself, Danny, because remember it's from her consciousness more or less talking down to the demon bear and saying, "Oh, it's okay. You don't need to be scared. You don't need to kill anybody." And that's it.
Right.
That's where that's the climax of the show. That's where it all stops at. A character talking to this creature out of a consciousness, telling the creature it's okay, and that's it. That's the end of the trend. That's what I waited 80 minutes into the film to see, and that's what we got. So as a whole, this was like we could make the debate as to whether this is the worst X-Men movie or is it Dark Phoenix or is it Apocalypse Dread. But like I said before, like I actually wrote this on Facebook. this movie franchise should have ended at Logan. It should have stopped right there.
Right.
With the New Mutants, at least they had a chance to just explore. Oh, well, what's the future of the X-Men? Like what you know what I mean? What's the legacy of that? They didn't even do that. They didn't even do that at all. They just kind of just scrape through it and just say, oh, well, I wish I was an X-Men. Blah blah blah. That's it, right? But as far as the X-Men movie goes, yeah, this is one of the worst I've seen. This is one of the dullest I've seen. Like I thought, like okay, like Dark Phoenix was bad though, but this is almost, if not worse than Dark Phoenix in terms of just how dull and dry and just uneventful things were. You have these badass characters with powers, and we don't really see much of that. They just put into these horror movie cliche scenarios. You know what I mean? And it's like you're just rolling your eyes and wondering, okay, well, if you have these powers, why are you not doing anything about it? Like, I understand you have this caretaker telling you you're not supposed to use the powers inside the house, but god damn it, somebody trying to kill you. Do something there. Why we
Right.
had to wait till the third act for you to do shit there? I mean, come on. And it just in terms of just seeing them use the powers, the movie feels at that. You know what I mean? For us to care about them, it feels at that. So I think I talked long enough about this. This gets a 2 out of 5. I want my money back. This is one
Wow.
of the worst I've seen for the year. And
Yeah.
I have a feeling, just the closing stuff, I have a feeling that there is actually some sort of R-rated cut of this,
Right.
and
Right.
I would
Right.
make the effort to see it because yes, by the time it comes out, it will be in home media. I can see it in its 1080p glory and whatnot, right? Instead of you know sponsored by slotslight.com, right? But I would actually like to see what was the R-rated cut, if it exists, of this movie. I think it might be better than what we got here, but it might be more competent, man. You know what I mean? What I got here was just toned down, just cut, whittled down to just be a basic PG-13 rated. You tell them from the word go, it's gonna be horrific. It's gonna be dark, and I just never got that. And even as an X-Men movie, it's just seeing characters just be X-Men and just do cool stuff. You really got that in near the end of the movie. And I don't know, that's just a feeling in my eyes. So yeah, this was a huge letdown. I don't know if we're gonna get any X-Men movies, going forward. But I heard last thing I'm gonna say, I heard that this was actually supposed to be the first of a trilogy. You know what I mean, of these sort of dark, horrific themed X-Men
Right.
movies. Yeah, we're not gonna get that anytime soon. And if we do, well, boy,
Yeah. We
y'all
know
y'all
it's
have a
on.
long way to go,
Well,
buddy. Y'all have a
Disney.
long.
Yeah. Well, Disney got to do that. They ain't doing it. So.
Yeah, but
Right.
whew, waste of time.
Right.
Anyway, so let's jump into Tenet. So in my case, I saw a calm copy of it, but it was
Okay.
bearable enough. I
Okay.
heard things. I was able to pick up on, well, the dialogue and whatnot. Luckily, I had subs, so I was able to understand fairly what was going on in the story
Okay.
itself.
Right.
Um, but yeah, this was a show that I was excited for from the jump. I
Yeah.
wanted to see this on IMAX, but unfortunately, I do even think we're gonna get that anytime soon. If we do, however, I will make the effort to watch it over because just getting it out of the way. Yes, this is a show that I would love to watch again.
Right.
Just merely not because I love the show, mind you. I'll get to that, but because I
Right.
think with a second viewing, I will understand things a lot more.
Right.
Right? Which is kind of to the um which is kind of both to the strength and detriment to this show, right? But
Right.
I'll get to that. But yeah, this is the latest film from my boy Christopher Nolan, i.e., this era's, Stanley Kubrick, in the sense that any movie that he puts out, you're excited as hell for. He's gonna do something unique. He's gonna bring something special to the table. I know you had to shell out them dollars to see. So I was looking forward to seeing this thing on the biggest screen possible. But COVID happened, right?
Right.
And even when we were hearing about, oh well, this movie is going to be pushed back and probably going to be released on VOD, Nolan was like, no, this has to be shown theatrically or else because I'm
Right.
Nolan. Wow, right? And it did show theatrically in some countries, but not in Trinidad as yet, unfortunately. And well, I think because of COVID-19, it really did affect the performance of the show here because like right now at times recording, Warner Brothers even want to put out the amount of money, the figures in terms of how much money this movie made theatrically.
Right.
So I don't know, but we'll see eventually. But yeah, Ricardo, what is Tenet about?
All right, so Tenet is about this guy who is like a uh, marine type SWAT team fella. And well, I'll name. The thing is, he's both by title and by name because I'll address that later, which is
Yeah.
something I have
Mhm.
a problem with. Yeah, yeah. He gets he does a mission. The mission doesn't seem to work out all that well, and he forces himself to well take a cyanide pill to almost kill himself, but he survives, right? Or at least he survived, but you learn it's something along the lines of some type of test. And then what we learn is that he gets caught up in something involving the term tenet, and you find out what tenet is. And what tenet is exactly is something to do. We're not sure what it is, but you learn something to do with just figuring out. They had to deal with this like a heist. They had to get a painting, and they had to deal with this guy who's this criminal. And the criminal, what we learn is that the criminal somehow getting uh like deliveries and technology from the future. And
Yeah.
you say, well, the future, how is this possible? And you find out how this works. What you learn is that sometime in the future, some type of not time travel per se, but a technology called inversion is created. And what inversion effectively does is that, well, what it says, it allows objects to go backward in time. So entropy or processes that we understand it play out differently, but in the context of itself. So you could allow yourself to do causality, but it have a whole science to it. And that's what happens. So what happens is that you have this device that allows things to be inverted and go back and forward in time. That is effectively what it is. And that's the story. That's where it starts. It's a big heist film. You have to get into contact with this guy, but what he does, he goes through the guy's wife, and it have a whole thing because the guy's wife is a art specialist, like she not a thing. What do you call it when
Yeah,
you
she could
price an art?
differentiate whether it's real or fake. She could do
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yes. She's not the price art and get the worth of art, and that's how she played it out, and that's where the story starts. That's the story, and it builds from there. And I would say, well, let's start the review now.
Mhm.
I would say it's not as good as Inception, but it's almost as good as Inception in my opinion. Almost. It
Yeah,
feel right,
I'd agree. Like he's going Inception level with this one
right.
though,
Well,
in
it's
terms
very
of the narrative and
right.
the well how characters get from point A to point B. That's all you'll see. Yeah,
Yeah. No, yeah. So it does a good job with a lot of that. I felt he it does the same thing that Inception does, and there's a term that you use in writing and theater and filmmaking. It's called usually in writing, it's called lamp shading. And
right.
what lamp shading is that you don't have to explain this thing, but it does it in such a way where you can accept it. Inception had a lot of lamp shading, and in terms of how the dream machine works,
Yeah,
this does that in terms of how the inversion machine works. It's time travel, but you don't have to explain anything more going on. What kind of time travel it is, we don't know, right? It could be Back to the
yeah.
Future rule. It could
I
be
had a little issue with that though. Like I wish that the show could have
right,
this kind of just made a like just a little point to say, okay, this is how it kind of works. All right, cool,
right,
move on, right? But
right.
just leaving it so ambiguous is just like, okay.
Right. Well, they play it out in terms of like, well, it is working this way and not that way. Because what I thought was the case is that it's not time travel, but what I thought it was some kind of anti-entropy thing was going to happen. That's what I thought they were going to do with it. But then
Right.
when they explain what's going on, it's like, okay, all right, that's what they're doing with it. All right, cool. And I felt it's very fast, it's very convoluted, especially that, and the pacing is pretty bad, especially that first act. But when
Oh boy.
things can yeah, but when things kind of come together eventually, um, then it works for me. Especially, and there's a certain point in the storyline involving an airport. That's when it really works for me. And
Yeah.
not the first time in the airport, the second time in the airport. That's when
Yes.
stuff
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that's when stuff started to come together for me. And that's when I started really enjoying the film. And then the end of the film has a like they do the reveal. of what going on, and I was like, all right, I enjoying this. And because when all was said and done, I wasn't too convoluted. I wasn't too confused by what was going on. It's very convoluted, but I wasn't confused, right? Because like what I thought was going on was fine. Like, oh, okay, that's what going on. Okay, okay. And then when I read up an explanation of the movie, I was like, yeah, um, that makes sense to me. That's what I think happened, and that's what happened. It's very fast. It's very convoluted. Don't try to keep up with it too much, but it does that. And I don't have a major issue with it. I will have to give this a rewatch, right? Um, but I felt it worked when all is said and done. And the big reveal involving Washington's character at the end, I like that. And then it fixed the last point, and we'll just get into spoilers probably. I felt it fixed the problem I had with Interstellar, right? Because Interstellar and this have time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it fixed that problem, which is explaining why people doing what they're doing. In Interstellar, that was not clear at all, in my opinion. I
Right.
felt
They,
that
they just
not
kind of throw this
right,
emotional thing, and I'm
right,
doing it because of love, kind of,
right.
right?
It was not clear why the future agents was doing what they was doing, right? In this, they gave a very good reason as to why the future faction was doing what they were doing. And it had this kind of environmentalist slash anti-natalist kind of subtext. If you know what anti-natalism is, it's the idea that people shouldn't be born at all. Like, we shouldn't
Oh,
create people. Right. It's a lot of people that don't believe that. They say the only way to end suffering is to end
right.
life.
It's just a stamp out humanity.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah, effectively, right. And that's what it was, right? That's like I thought that was good. Like that's kind of the subtext of what's going on. Of yeah, that's not necessarily the case, but and then what I also liked about it again, once you start to think about how inversion works, it don't have to fight down that whole well how this happening and how that happened because when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense in terms of like how far in the future was inversion invented? You're not sure because it could be very far because people could just keep sending stuff back, inverting. So that's where the Cold War dimension is that comes in. I really like that whole temporal Cold War concept. I thought was really cool. And then, the last joke I make was, well, Berman and Breger, if you know who those two people are, that is how you do a temporal Cold War, right? That is how you write a temporal Cold War. Berman and Breger is the two writers who wrote the temporal Cold War storyline in Star Trek Enterprise, and they royally fuck it up. So
Okay.
that is how you do a temporal Cold War, Berman and Breger. Yeah, I dug it for what it was. I enjoyed it. I think it was solid. It was great. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Well, okay, so here's the thing. Like on the one hand, I love Nolan's approach to films, right? Like
Right,
he's just that type who like probably would do anything to just be in a cinema, to just experience something, right? And come out of it
right,
feeling like, yeah, I saw something I never saw before, right? And that's his approach to nearly everything, ever since the Prestige, right?
right,
So even when he reaches far and he doesn't quite make it like Interstellar, we still applaud the vision. We still applaud what he did, right? And I still love Interstellar, even though it is, like you say, a flawed masterpiece, right?
right.
Um, and it's like we just had this guy on this pedestal, ever since the Dark Knight, but even stuff like Dark Knight Rises, which I still defend and I love,
Right.
had its issues, right? And then they had like Dunkirk, for example, which was the previous film he put out, had its issues as well too, just mainly in terms of the execution, what it kind of all means, right, as
Right.
a whole. Like, what's the point of showing three events in different time periods and then they all come
Right.
together?
But
Like,
yeah,
okay,
because it's about time. Right.
yeah, like, all right, why can't it just be about Dunkirk, man?
Right.
Like when you think about it like that, nah. Like
Yeah.
there's also a sort of mechanical process to everything that he makes now.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can't just be a linear film. No, it has to do this now. You know what I mean?
But
So
that's the thing. That's the thing with Nolan. He's a person who. Okay, so he's a person again. Much well, I mentioned this with Villeneuve earlier. He really caters to my generation or my generation really didn't really kind of rejected camp and rejected the ornate for the for lack of a better term, the realistic, the verisimilitude, and the minimalist, and the
right,
functional, and the utilitarian. And Nolan does a good job with that. He does a good job of balancing that whole. And I there's a term for Chris Nolan. I call it meta modern, right? he's a person who does a good job of squaring the fantastical with the realistic. You get a good
Yeah.
sense that this could work, right? When you see again Inception, what he does very well is make the aesthetic of realism well. He does that incredibly well. So with Inception, there's no explanation how the dream machine works. However,
No.
what he does is that he will put all these little quick visual these visual little quick visual languages and aesthetic approaches and say and throw away lines and say, well, you don't have to understand how this magic machine effectively works, but the military has been using it and we've seen it in universities. And I'm a guy in
Yeah,
a
yeah. Understand.
I'm a guy in a Brooks Brothers outfit, so I'm using it. So therefore, it has to be real, right? Because look at this corporatist culture using it, and so on and so forth. And this film does that really well, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's that it's this inversion thing. It making kind of sense, not really kind of, but when you
Yeah,
see
kinda, yeah.
right, but then when you see all these characters who using it in the military and they're so sure about it, that means it had to be working, right? It's
Right.
just it's a kind of it's an appeal to authority in a sense, right? That's what it is, right? Yeah, and it makes it work. So yeah, go ahead now.
Yeah, yeah. So, like for me, because I still applaud his visions and just how he's able to just take these kind of out there, but fantastical, yes, but
Yeah,
he makes it practical, right?
right.
Ideas and put them into film and get away with it and get money from Warner Brothers to make films. Then yeah, you know what I mean. I will support him all the way, right? But with this one here, I would say that it's not his best work, like by far,
Right.
it's not right.
Right.
But I do agree, it's almost up there with Inception in terms of the idea and the concept, execution, all that stuff, right?
Right.
What
Right.
I did not expect to, and you know what, this is a reference that a lot of people make of this. I did not expect the James Bond worship in this too. Like I did not
Right.
go in
Yeah.
expecting this thing to play out like a Bond film, and I explain
That's
why
the
I'm
thing.
like.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
well, go
JD
on.
Washington. Yeah, no, JD Washington is like the closest thing you'll get to a black Bond, right? I mean, I find yeah,
Yeah,
I it was very James Bond. I noticed. Yes, I agree.
yeah, but not just with him though. But let's talk about him as in John David Washington. Yeah, he is great in this.
He's good in.
I love how he fits in this world. He will throw out a little quip ever so often too to kind of
Right.
make us relate to him though.
So
Um,
okay, at face value, when the film finished, so one of the things I was thinking, and a lot of people seem to agree with me on this, is that
uh-huh.
they could have switched him and
Oh,
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson, yeah, who's
Right, yeah,
awesome. Right.
they could have switched the two of their roles and it would have worked. Like a lot of people are saying Robert Pattinson could have been the protagonist and he could have been the side guy. But I find it works with him as the protagonist. Oh God, I'm saying that word.
Yeah, well, we
um,
know bringing it up here because
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he
But
has no name, so it's like
right,
Fight Club. He has no name, but in the credits
right,
though, it caught me too when I saw the credits.
right,
Like, wait, what? He's the protagonist? That
right,
that
yeah,
they leave in this.
right, yeah.
What's the point? We
Driver.
supposed to project ourselves into him or
Well,
something?
yeah,
Like,
drive has driver, right?
oh
Well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anyway, so but the idea is I like the idea that he has this kind of unconventional thinking,
Right.
and he's the one who start the paradigm of the thing. Like I like that, and they do the thing that I really liked where if it reminded me a little bit like oh gosh oh god Limitless.
Oh
Remind me
yeah, which
you
I
see
haven't
how
seen since that movie
right.
came out though. But
Right, but what I liked about Limitless, you realize that he was on top of things the entire time. I love
yes,
that. I absolutely love that in Limitless. And this did that. This like, oh shit, like they had a big reveal. And when my boy say yeah the halfway point, like hey, that real dread. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I dug that. Yeah,
yeah.
but
So yeah,
yeah, go
go
on.
ahead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So our lead, aka the protagonist, right? Yeah, he essentially is the black bond, right? So if you look
yeah,
at, oh, well, he could do it. Like, look, here's an example here. You know what I mean? But yeah, going in, I did not know we were going to get a Bond film because, yeah, you know what I mean. Once when his mission begins, I didn't think that it would involve him meeting, well, the character of Kat, who's played by Elizabeth Debicki,
yeah.
and this thing with her husband, who's played by a scene chewing Kenneth
Oh yeah.
Branagh.
I know, but
Yeah,
I thought he was good at this. I thought
no,
he
he
was real good.
was, he was,
Yeah, that
but
gets
he's
better
so
because like it take me a while to pick up with that. I can't brother John.
Yeah,
Not
no,
really? Yeah,
it took me a while too. It took me a
yeah,
while. Yeah. But what I mean seeing Chewin is that he's bad, well, it's hinted that he is abusive to, his wife, right?
right,
But
right,
it starts off with her like more or less wanting custody of the son and her just
right,
trying to be as far away from him as possible. And he's just this guy on this boat, on this yacht, sorry, with these
yeah,
henchmen, and he uses the inverted, items and stuff to write, which you learn
right,
later on. But the setup of it though was very Bond, right? Like, okay, now this agent has to get with this girl for
yeah, yeah,
him to get closer to
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah,
That's some James Bond shit. But
yeah, exactly.
specifically that is very it's very Daniel Craig Bond. You know what I mean?
Right,
Where
right,
like it plays out like a typical Bond film. Like it's gonna play out, but there's gonna be some kind of dark twist. You know how dangerous the situation is. So you
right.
for a guy like him who have no powers or whatnot, the man still have goons and he could still do things to you, right? And you see
Right,
that
right.
earlier. Like the man is still like, okay, I should not fuck with this guy. So I like that, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, Kelly Brado was great to this too. Like characters like him, he's just really a character you love to hate. And
yeah,
yeah, I just loved hating this guy. Like dude, I just want to punch you in the face so bad.
yeah. No,
Just
you're
mainly
good.
because of
Yeah,
the way how he treats his wife though. But
right,
what I do praise the show for is that, like, okay, sometimes you'll hint at how abusive he is at one moment. They do show it, but it's not like, okay, we're just going to show this guy as we're not going to touch on domestic violence here with the show. That's a way about. But I would admit though, it caught me completely off guard because, like, all right, but we're not here for time stuff, you know what I mean? So we get the
right.
time stuff in it, right? And I had to think about this, right? So, me with Inception, I love Inception so much. I thought we'd like, get like all the time stuff like one time, like just see all the
Right,
cool stuff and see how it's done. But the
right.
show just kind of
Yeah,
builds
take
it.
its time. It took its time with that
Yeah. Yeah.
because when
At
did
first I was just like, oh gosh, but I want to see the time stuff play out though. But
yeah,
the payoff, however, I was like,
yes, yeah.
all right, okay. I should have been
Because
more patient.
right, because what they
All right,
do, you only
yeah,
see one little piece of time stuff in the beginning, right?
yeah,
And it's like okay, but here's the thing: I really wished I went into this movie blind. Yeah, I really, really wish I did that because that would have blown me away. If the movie would have blown me away if I went in blind.
right.
Because like when they start to see some of the bigger set pieces later, it's like, well, would they make it work?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And especially like near the, like how you see the Ronnie second act. Well, Ronnie Mills near the second act where things that make sense. So you just see
right.
the second half of the show, right? Yeah, I agree with you. From there, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, now
yeah,
we're seeing how the spark
right,
connects here and all that kind of stuff, right?
right. Yeah, and
Still, go on.
I watch back that just to see because I think it hard to follow. As I say, I really want to give it a second look
Yeah,
because
I'll talk about that
because
convolutedness of the show.
yeah, because they do something with it's something involving a mysterious soul there involving an inversion fight, right?
Right.
And we get to see that from, but like I say, we get to see it from two different perspectives.
Yeah, I
Right.
dog that though. But
And
like the first time
I
I
was
see it,
in my
it
brain,
looked dope though. Like it looked dope.
right?
Like it would never compare, just as a fight scene. It would never compare to the hallway fight in Inception. That is
Nah,
awesome,
nah,
right? And especially with
right,
Hans Zimmer scoring it,
right.
mind blowing. I love it, right?
But
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 here, just the way how they is the logistics of it that I
yeah,
love though. It really does feel like, hey, if this inversion thing exists, this
right.
is exactly how a fight would play
That's
out.
it. You really get the
Like,
sense again.
oh,
Nolan does a good job. Nolan does a good job of getting you to think that this thing plausible. Now you're watching it and it's like, yeah, but all right, it working. Because I tried and I look. I had to watch it over. But I was watching this and thinking how consistent this is now. Because that's the problem with inversion. Yeah, remember it have the whole what's called it by the observation window.
right.
So you saw stuff from another perspective through that fight now. And I was
Yeah.
like, I was that really hard, dude. Like, so you wondered how consistent he was. And I get the feeling it's like that's the one thing he's get right. So he wouldn't have fucked with that no, and messed that up. I'm sure
Yeah.
he would have nitpicked the hell out of that. And he's get that right. Like, from a technical standpoint, he gets this stuff right. And I was enjoying the hell out of this. Because when they
Yeah.
do that, and then you see a part, and he say he take and he go back in the van and say, you should have tell me. I'm like, but that real hard, though. That real clever.
Yeah.
And
I thought that. Yeah.
I like that
Um.
he has the quote unquote protagonist works because he's the roughneck person, but he mind malleable enough to make sense it now. And he
Yeah,
ended up
yeah,
being,
yeah.
right. Yeah, go ahead now.
Right. But yeah, I would admit though, like I say, it is convoluted, dude. And
Right.
even when they explain things like how the observation window and those things work, like just seeing how
Right.
the same event will play from two different perspectives, I
Right.
was a little bit confused
Right.
still.
Right.
But it was,
Right.
but at a point in time, I was just like, okay, just watch it, just see how it plays out.
Yeah.
That's
No,
logistics. Watch how it plays out
I
logistically,
will
and
fully
then you
admit,
you figure it out after.
yes, yes, I will fully admit that is like literally close to 3 decades of me, how much goddamn time travel movies I watch, how many times I argue with friends with time travel movie, argue with my family with time travel movie, argue with my cousin with time travel movie,
Dude,
argue on
when
the
I met
internet
you,
with
you
time.
were arguing about Looper Dream.
Right, exactly. The first time you meet me was our time travel argument, and that trained me to absorb this relatively easy. I'll admit that. This is listen, this is your time travel master's degree, right? Like let me admit that.
I
You
love it. I love
can't
it. Yeah.
like you can't just jump into this. Either you completely turn off your brain or you could follow and then kind of just accept what they're saying, which is fine because that could work. That could work as an audience member, I think. Or you're just so accustomed to how time travel should work and does work, and you end up following it. It's like, yeah, that this if this going backward like that, and they do the thing because they talk about this thing called the pincer, which is I
Yeah.
thought it was a cool idea, right? Simple and cool idea. I love that. And I was watching it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like all of this makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah. You're
Um,
right. But
I'll,
I would admit,
when you, I'll get
go
to
on.
the bad. You'll when you talk, I'll get to the bad
Yeah.
after. I'll talk
Yeah,
about this. Right.
because there is some not so good, right? So
Right.
let's get to that quickly, right?
Right.
But yeah, I do wish, even like with Inception, like when I first saw it, I'd admit I didn't know everything about it, but stuff was fairly simple enough to follow, and you just
Right.
kind of accept what's going on in the film, right? Here,
Right.
it took me a while for me to get, and even at the very end, I was still like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I just should have focused on this more and whatnot. 'Cause I was just
Right.
kind of taken aback a bit with the whole James Bond stuff. Like I didn't know we were
Right.
going to James Bond territory, right?
Yeah. Me too.
And
Yeah.
luckily with under Nolan's hand, he keeps things mostly consistent, right? Like I felt like the
Right.
whole Bond moments in the first act where they just throw everything off and make people think that they're watching something else, and then when they wondering what's going on, that's when you throw the time stuff to get them back into rhythm, right? Yeah,
Right.
I was thinking about that at first, right? But luckily he was kind of keeping things moving at a pace, right? Um, the pacing is really quick though, a little too
Right.
quick, and just to get to the not so good, right? Also, I heard people were complaining about the sound mixing in this. Unfortunately, I couldn't really hear it, but I could tell
Right.
that there were a few moments where, yes, the music would be drowning out the dialogue,
Yeah.
though.
Interstellar had that same problem where
Yeah,
for some reason they have the music or just the general other song drowning out dialogue for some reason.
yeah.
And in the
Look,
case,
I love music and all, and I love
right.
when music shoots up in movies, but
Right.
like it can't be at the expense of
Yeah.
you hearing
But it,
the
it
dialogue, though.
yeah, in Interstellar they did it, but I got the feeling they was trying to do it for the sake of like drama because the whole
Yeah,
point was
right.
he
Exactly.
was
Yeah,
because the one scene in Interstellar that they did this was the confession that the equation not finished or he didn't never solve the equation. The father and Daddy Brand.
yeah,
Um right. And this it had no reason for it because I think the only scene people was complaining about, and I think I know what scene it was, but I could kind of follow it. That was the scene when they was on the skivvy boats thing, right?
yes.
That was the only scene. That was it. But it was fine because to me, what they was talking about wasn't like plot wise that important in the grand scheme now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, right, whatever.
Yeah, like you're right. You know, they do it for like dramatic tension. Kind of
Right,
like a Jean-Luc Godard stuff. Like if you want to go way back, right? Like he did that
right,
in a
right,
weekend, right? So yeah.
right,
And another thing though, like as far as getting the story going, getting things to happen, right? Because
right,
yeah, just like Interstellar, sorry, just like Inception, we have some high shit going on, right? But
right,
I find like when it came to both John David Washington and Robert Pattinson's characters, it's almost like they just know everything what to do. So
right,
like there will be moments where John will just be saying, "Okay, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need to be here at this time," and oh,
right,
well, you know what we need this for this to happen, and then Robert would say, oh, well, what if I get this? And you know what I mean? It's
Right.
almost like
So
just know how to solve this
right.
unbelievably hard problem. I'm
But
like,
I
all
didn't have
right,
I didn't have a problem with
what?
that. I didn't have a problem with that simply because what they reveal at the end, right?
Okay, okay, okay,
Right,
okay. I
exactly.
get, but
At
still,
the
it
end,
just felt a little too convenient.
right,
Like the big scene involving this plane crash. That's what
right,
we'll call it. It's like,
right,
okay, well, we need this thing, and we need this. It's like, well,
right.
okay. But yeah,
No,
as I
when he
say, how it kind of comes together in the end, it's like,
exactly
okay.
in the end, and when he tell him, look, you're the halfway point. I only tell him, which I loved. I was like, all right, well, that everything makes sense. Everything
Yeah,
falls together, and it's a nice way to tie this up. But speaking of tying things up, okay, so for me, the bad was a couple things. Like I like J.D. Washington in this. I thought he was good as a roughneck character, but I don't think he had the best chemistry with everybody. Like I felt he could have had better chemistry with everybody. Like he did. He had okay chemistry with Elizabeth Debicki, but he's all right. He had okay
yeah,
chemistry with Kenneth Branagh. He's all right. He had okay chemistry. The best chemistry he had was with Robert Pattinson.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I felt some little things was a little extraneous, and they could have like tied together a little better. Like I felt Michael Caine's character should have been married to Priya, for example. Little
Yeah,
stuff like
like
this.
he
Like
just literally felt like he was just there
yeah,
because he's just been in a majority
everyone.
of like he reminded me of like when he was in Interstellar. Like he was just there because
Right,
it's Michael Caine and it's
right.
Nolan. Like, you know.
Right, exactly. And I felt they could have stitched him a little better in better. Well, else I'll say there was no problem with it, boy. Yeah, little stuff like that. Just they could have
Yeah,
stitched together. They could
yeah.
have stitched together the narrative a little better. Oh,
Yeah,
like the
well, one thing though, sorry to cut you, and I
last
think
problem, last problem,
like with the
last issue, last
okay,
issue. Um, I felt the relationship that he had with the Becky could have been better resolved. Like it's not romantic, but he helping her, but I'm not sure what's going on. Like they kind of
that's a good point. That's a good point. It
they,
just
they,
felt like he
they,
was obligated to help her because of what she was
right.
going through with her husband.
Right, it's going back and forth on that, and I was not too clear on what was going on there. So it's like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
But if there's how one major gripe with this too, and remember this is over my first viewing, so I'm hoping that it'll be
right,
rectified. More viewings is that as much as a praise as I love to praise Nolan, you know what I mean, for being too intellectual and whatnot with his films. At times the film does feel too convoluted for its own good. Like it
right,
just has to be hard to follow. It has to be incomprehensible. But
right.
you still now, as a movie viewer, have to sit down and watch everything and just wait for things to happen, and then hopefully it'll explain itself or something like that for you to be like,
Right.
okay, you know what I mean? But yeah, it does feel a little like, okay, like you're really trying to like confuse or bore the audience a bit with this. Like,
Right.
don't be
Well,
don't be convoluted with
there's
it.
the thing, huh? Here's the thing, huh? Again, Nolan is he slightly smarter, as the same American villain or the slightly smarter Michael Bay, right? He's the person that it's still an action movie, but he puts in enough for you to give a rewatch. Unlike the movie we talked about last time that I don't feel to rewatch, even though if I rewatch it, I'll probably appreciate it more and enjoy it. That is the Charlie Kaufman movie.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Uh it's that, right? It's you have to give it a rewatch, but it's a lot of little details. But the details don't matter because all the important big beats matter, right? And that's how I felt about it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. And last before I get to final thoughts and rating, um, I'll admit, I'll admit, like I said earlier, I had to wait for it. I wish I was more patient, but yeah, that climatic battle
That was
though,
hard. That was
that was
hard.
hard.
That
It's
was
one of
hard.
those
Yeah,
things like you just have to watch
yeah,
closely as to what's going on. 'Cause I was watching it from a technical perspective, like,
yeah,
okay, like in my mind, I know this shit should not make any sense at all.
yeah.
Eh?
But it
It
working.
should
Yeah,
look like the silliest, dumbest thing ever. But
yeah,
under Nolan's hand, under the
yeah. The man make it
cinematographer that
work.
they
Yeah,
got with it, and music, and just the execution, I was like, this is real bad, though. Like, this is why we go to see Nolan films, shit, just to see something like this. And you come out of it like, this probably didn't make any sense, but that shit was dope, though. You know what I mean? So yeah,
right.
points for that scene, though. And yeah, I had to wait for it, but it was worth it.
No,
So
but the stuff I liked was the just like when he the big thing in the storyline he becomes inverted, and I
yes,
find all of that work because it's like oh shit, and it's typical time travel movie shit. Like we
yeah,
see this
yeah, yeah, it is.
you see this in other time travel movies, but how it's done. Because it's such
That's the
great
thing.
payoffs now. So if
Yeah.
this, like it have a part with a car, boom, that was good. It have a part with the part with the airport, that was good. I'm like, well, word. It's the little things now. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, and truly, like when it comes to the action, though, yeah, this movie, nails it. Though it comes through with some really, really solid action sequences, and then when you see the whole inversion stuff play out, though, it's like, yeah, it just
Yeah.
adds this extra layer. Like you've never seen
Yeah.
stuff like this before. Or
Yeah.
maybe you've seen it, but it's not in this way. So yeah, overall, this is a show that I need to rewatch though. Like I
Right.
can't wait for it to come out theatrically for real, so I could see it, even if I have to wait till next year.
Yeah.
In terms of the convolutedness of it, I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
gonna understand. I certainly won't understand everything the second time around, right? But I will understand a bit more. But I'm really not sure at the moment if this is a film that I'm gonna come back to, right?
Right.
It's just the second view it has to like really sell it for me, right? Like whether I really see the way how it should be seen, hear the way it should be heard, right?
Right. Right.
Before I got here, this is another ambitious effort from Nolan. Yeah, like he is one of the few directors to get away with stuff like this too, and
Yeah.
that's what I love it for. Um, at times it does feel a little too convoluted for its own good, almost like to the point like I'm just really trying to confuse the shit out of you just because, you know what I mean? But I know for some people it might take them out of it. But I would say stick with it, or at least find something to latch on to, whether it's John's character or
Right.
Robert Pattinson's character, or just something
Right.
going on,
Yeah.
some conflict or something, and then you will see it play out, right? May not well, like in my case, it didn't entirely make sense at the very end,
Right.
but I did come out of it like, yeah, boy, this really would have been something I would have at least enjoyed the experience of seeing on big screen. Though. Like,
Right.
and that's
Right.
that as a whole is what Nolan is about. Like, you could say, wait, what about the narratives? And oh yes, one other gripe, last gripe. Um, didn't really feel that attached to the characters emotionally, especially the
Yeah.
protagonist himself. I felt
Right.
it
No,
more
that
for Kat's character, given
right.
what she was going through, but I
Right.
really didn't feel it for John. 'Cause I know, well, for John's character, 'cause I know you would have get out of it somehow, right?
Right. Right.
That's it.
Right.
So I wasn't like, oh my god, well, if he doesn't do this, he could die or this could happen. I
Right.
know,
Right.
get you right. But as a whole, yeah, this is another ambitious film from Nolan. This is probably one of the most ambitious films you'll see in 2020. As for its longevity, I'm not too sure. I can't really say. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, this is up there as far as one of his most, you know, I don't want to say thought provoking, but for one of his most daring films, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the man actually pull off a Bond film in his own way.
Yeah.
So yeah, the man get a point for that, right? So
Yeah.
rating wise, at the moment, I'll give this a decent 4 to 5, right?
Right.
I have a feeling that if I watch it again, it'll go to a strong 4. I don't think it'll go to a 4.5 anytime soon. I won't
Right.
say right off the bat that this is like one of my all-time favorite Nolan films, but he does do a lot here. You have to commend him on that. And really, you don't see films like this. Like even if it
Right.
has familiar stuff in it, you just do see stuff like this. And yeah, that's a testament to how great a director Nolan is, and of course as a writer, of course. So yeah, I hope to see this on big screen one day. If you have seen it, you're lucky. If you hated it because
Right.
of how it was, yeah, you got to see the thing again. So in my case, I really can't wait to see Tenet again. Final
Yeah.
words on rating.
Yeah, as I say, it's a little too convoluted. As I say, it's not as good as Inception because it's not as strong of a character piece. You're right about that. The characters, yeah, that's not as attached. They're good characters, but the whole point is that because a big point of the storyline is that you're not supposed to know who he is, blah blah blah, because they are the halfway point, quote unquote, right? And that was the kind of the payoff for that, but it's still you're not feeling it as much as say Cobb from Inception.
Yeah,
I agree with that. As I say, I dug the hell out of it. I find, but the reveals about that was cool. I say I like the intentions of the intentions of the villains. I liked. You had to give the villains a good motivation, and I like those motivations. When he explained what was going on, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Dry up river and them kind of thing, right? Hardness.
yeah.
Um, um, but as I say, we live in a twilight world. And we are no
Yes,
friends.
yes, yes, we do. I see
And
what
we
you
know,
did there.
and
Mhm.
no frills of dust. And so, if Interstellar was Nolan's contact, this was his time cup, right? It could,
Ah,
You know,
Okay, okay,
yeah,
okay. I
you,
see what
you
you
could
did there.
use you could use some trimming. I felt some of the pacing was ultimately didn't have a payoff and wasn't that good in that sense. But I wanted I felt they could have done little tweaks, like if they switched Neil and the protagonist, if it would have worked or not. I'm not sure, right? But I enjoyed for what it is. I had a lot of fun with the set pieces. It have a kick-ass moment with this building. That was badass, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
real hard. uh, but I dug the hell out of it. So I'll say I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It gets a low IMAX as a rating. I it's really good. It's interesting. Technically it's very impressive, and
It is.
ultimately,
Even with the
yeah,
quality I saw it in, I could see the
yeah,
technical prowess in the
yeah.
film.
And as I say, it's fun in that way. So I give it a low IMAX. So low IMAX for me. Like about 8 out of 10.
Right, right.